we had a Air Force, what do you call that, exchange student in our company, and it was his birthday, I guess.
Right.
So we taped him up on one of those rolling racks, whatever they call the laundry racks. Taped him up, painted him blue because he's a Zoomy, and drug him out in the middle of central area.
Right.
And then the officer in charge comes over, is running towards us. Oh shit! And he's in his greens. He's helping this guy out of what we put him up in, and he gets a little paint on him. So me and Rich, it wasn't Joe. Joe was studying or sleeping, but me and Rich are waddling over to Central Barracks, and instead of going through the door and sneaking our way through our room, we're gonna fool everybody. We go through the window because they'll never get us that way. And that was my first slug.
Welcome to the Courage Never Quits podcast, where members of the West Point class of 1986 tell their stories. I'm your host, Paul LaFontaine. My guest today is Daniel Adair Schafer, column number 43645. We'll hear about Dan's views on being Corps Squad versus Club Squad and take a look at his impressive commemorative military coin collection. As always, the views expressed in this podcast are those of the participants, not of West Point, the Army, or any organization, most particularly Revenue International. Dan Schafer, welcome to the podcast.
Glad to be here, partner.
A class legend. It's like, I feel like you're the first celebrity we've had on here.
That's such bullshit, but thank you.
Sitting in Naples, Florida.
Indeed.
Talk to me about Naples, Florida. What is it about Florida? What made you a Florida man?
Well, I got to go back to the winter of '84. I was on, as we all were, Christmas break at home in Illinois.
Yeah.
And I jumped in I guess it must have been 85 then, 84, 85, whatever. I jumped in the car that my parents had gotten for me.
Yeah.
It was kind of a Porsche. It was a 924. Me and a couple buddies went up to Chicago, and we're hanging out at Mother's on Rush Street. Actually, as we're walking in, there's a group of girls walking out, and one of them caught my eye. And so the story goes, I gently grabbed her arm and said, "Hey, let's dance." And she was on her way out, but she was mesmerized, and we danced, and we dated for a while, and she actually came to our graduation. But I had ADHD, and I went to Fort Sill, and she went this direction, and I lost track of her, and I wasn't smart enough to pick up the crumbs that she threw out.
The crumbs.
And we ended up reconnecting decades later, and in 18 we reconnected and stayed connected. Marriage V2 for both of us. So she moved down here with where her parents live. They live in Fort Myers, and so she moved to Naples, and I did what I had to do. So I moved to Naples. So that's why I'm in Florida.
Kimberly Asher Schafer, your current wife. You met in 1985 in Chicago.
Yeah.
And how did you reconnect?
It's a book.
That's an amazing story. How did you reconnect? What was the circumstance of just running back into each other?
Well, she tracked me down.
Well, you're a very trackable guy.
Well, that's nonsense, but she tracked me down in about 2012. It wasn't the right time for either one of us.
Right.
We were both married. We just talked and chatted, and but I guess we stayed on top of mind. And late 18, I was separated. She was divorced.
Okay.
We
the stars aligned.
Exactly. So there's a book or a movie somewhere in that story, I think. It might not be a Hallmark movie, but it might be one that sells something.
One thing you have never been accused of, my brother, is being the subject of a Hallmark movie.
Okay, sorry.
Where is Normal, Illinois?
Right in the middle of the state.
Right in the middle of the state.
St. Louis, Peoria, Champaign. Right.
And that's that's your hometown, Normal, Illinois. And then how many people are in Normal?
Jeez. How many people are normal is the question.
Well,
It's actually the global headquarters for State Farm.
oh, is that right?
Um,
Okay.
that's what moved me there when I was in grade school. My dad moved there instead of moving the family to New Jersey because he was an insurance executive and he was on the ladder to go out and be a VP in
Yeah.
Jersey. He said, "Yeah, no, I'll go to State Farm instead."
Okay. That's what took you there. And then growing up, what was it about? What were you a tremendous athlete? Obviously, you actually wrestled at the academy. What was it about? What were the sports that you played growing up? Were you always an athlete? What was the deal?
Yeah, I wrestled. I played football. That's where I settled. But we all played everything.
Right.
I sucked at basketball, but I played it. I was okay in
Yeah.
baseball. But I kind of found a home wrestling and playing football.
Now, did you have to travel all
Um,
over Illinois, or was there a local league? How did that work? Because I was in a small school. I had to go long distances in my high school career. How did it work for you?
well, in high school, we had conferences for the football team, and same for the high school. I didn't wrestle like my kid wrestled. My
Right.
kid wrestled when he was like 6 or 7 in the middle of Oklahoma, and we traveled all over the freaking country for
Right.
that competition. I started wrestling in fifth or sixth grade, and
Well, that's
it wasn't all encompassing.
right.
It was just, oh, that's what I did during the winter.
Right.
When actually I played hockey, but when those two sports collided, it was like hockey ended up being a very expensive sport, and wrestling was, oh, I can get some shoes.
Right.
So that's what had me land in wrestling as opposed to hockey.
Okay. Gotcha. And then what was it about West Point that attracted your attention?
Oh, geez. I feel bad because so many of our classmates, oh, I wanted to go there forever. And I want to be a soldier and shit. You know, I was planning on wrestling at Illinois State.
Yeah.
I had a scholarship to Southern Illinois.
Oh, okay.
I was,
So
I
you
was
were no
pretty good, but
slouch when it came to wrestling. You had other opportunities.
I was pretty good, but I was not a high level
Okay.
wrestling. And but I had pretty good grades. I don't know. High school wasn't that tough, I guess. I don't know. Maybe we didn't have a really fast paced academic school, but
Sure.
it wasn't very hard. So I got attention from school, and then Coach Steers started to call on me. And so he was recruiting me, and I'm like, hey, this is kind of cool.
Okay.
And I went on a visit, and one of my normal community um, compadre the year before us, Scott Miller, and you may know the name. He was the captain of the basketball team.
Oh wow.
He went to
Okay.
my high school, so I went and I stayed with him, and I got the whole recruitment treatment, which meant the first he took me to the firsty club, and we all got liquored up and danced with girls. I'm like, oh my god, this is great!
This is
I'm
what it
gonna love
is.
this. Sign me up. This
The
is
first
great.
club dancing with girls all 4 years.
Exactly. So I was sold. Yeah, yeah. So I was being recruited. It would be no burden on the parents, so I thought, and
Yeah.
I would get to wrestle a little bit. So that was. I wasn't like praying every night at the side of my bed, hoping for an appointment because I didn't know what that was.
I think you were probably more like the majority of classmates than those of us who were kind of had our eye on the place. What did the wrestling team soft pedal the military side of it? I've talked to the football and the baseball guys. They said no, they were pretty realistic about the difficulty. Despite dancing with girls at the Firsty Club, did they actually lay it out straight on how difficult it would be?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, there were Chris Johnson, who was the captain of the team, class 82, who I've stayed in touch with over the years.
Mhm.
He I don't know that he told me a whole lot of anything other than, let's go have a beer. But Coach Steers, who I've also stayed in touch with, him and his wife, over the years, he of course was straight with me on all that stuff,
Right.
on all the
On
difficulty. And
The
He's a great
additional
guy.
load that comes with being an athlete at the academy.
Right.
So coming into West Point, you weren't a guy who studied it ahead of time. Were you? What did you do to prepare? Did you prepare at all when you came?
Yeah, I knew that there was that test we had to pass, the shuttle run and throwing the basketball over your head. Yeah, that was pretty much it. I mean, I didn't go get rucksacks and put weights in them and
Any of that stuff?
no, polishing shoes. What the hell does that mean? No, I I did not. I was a civilian going to
Didn't they have
college.
us buy a set of low quarters before we went? I think they recommend. I think we were supposed to have a set of low quarters or something. I just can't. I kind of remember that.
I don't remember that. I don't
Anyway,
remember much.
I don't
I
either
think I
really,
was
but
dropped on my
I
head
know
a
some of
lot.
our classmates showed up with shine low quarters, and they really got us. They stole a march on us.
Prep school wieners.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So Beast. How did Beast hit you? You first plebe company was C2, so you're over on that side of the Corps. What? How did Beast hit you?
I had good roommates, and had a good squad. Jack Pachuto
Oh boy,
was the assistant squad leader. I
really?
think it was no, he was the roommate of my squad leader,
Yeah.
Dave Viggers, who recently passed away, sadly enough. But my roommates were Gabaldon and Joe Martin.
Oh really? Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It
Like
was kind of fun. And Mary
that's
Ellen was
amazing
in
because
our
you ended up going to B4 with Joe.
yeah, that's kind of weird, right? We were in the same company all 4 years, um, and somehow have remained friends.
And he's still talking to you, which is amazing.
Exactly, exactly. Here's a quick sidebar. These beanheads are in the room. There's three of us, and we had a Air Force. What do you call that? Exchange student in our company, and it was his birthday, I guess.
Right.
So we taped him up on one of those rolling racks, whatever they call the laundry racks. Taped him up, painted him blue because he's a zoomie, and drug him out in the middle of central area.
Right.
And then the officer in charge comes over, is running towards us. Oh shit! And he's in his greens. He's helping this guy out of the what we put him up in, and he gets a little paint on him. So me and Rich, it wasn't Joe. Joe was studying or sleeping, but me and Rich are waddling over to Central Barracks, and instead of going through the door and sneaking our way through our room, we're gonna fool everybody. We go through the window because they'll never get us that way. And that was my first slug.
Well, always a strategic thinker, Dan. That was well done.
Or not so much.
You went in your own window.
Yes.
That's thinking,
Whatever.
brother.
I thought I'm on my way to being a centuryman.
Right. That was the takeoff. That was the launch pad for your career on the area.
Exactly.
Did you? So Gabaldon and Martin, two great classmates. How did how did you guys? Were you a funny room? Were you a very strict room? How did you guys support each other? Because that's a big part of plebe year.
This is gonna give you a hint as to what I would have suggested to myself later.
Mm-hmm.
I was a freaking ghost. I wrestled, so I was out.
Mm-hmm.
The fact of the matter was, Joe was a swimmer, so he was out.
He was out. Yeah.
Rich carried the load.
Did he? Yeah.
He got hazed. We're like, formation. What does that even look like? Parades? How do you do that? Why would you? So
Rich is still angry about it, by the way. So,
I'm sure he is. Yeah. So Joe and I appreciated Rich's support.
yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, he's the vice president of our class and has been the vice president since 1984 when we voted him in. And so it's like this, unlike a politician who is, an XYZ for life, he's got this burden for life. If he ever said he wanted out of it, we just said, no, you got it. You just keep going. So it actually started plebe year when you guys had him support you.
Yeah. He had he had too much to carry from early on.
From early on. Well, he bears it with dignity. We love him for it. Oh, so wrestling was the first year, right? And talk about your career, your athletic career there at the academy.
I wish I had a great story, but the fact of the matter is, I wrestled. I love to wrestle. I came here and I'm like, wow, we are really freaking good, which means there's some good wrestlers in the room. And I was good enough that most of the people that I wrestled in our room, I could handle the first time. But once they learned the two moves I had,
that was it.
It was it. So I wrestled the first year. I was recruited at 142.
Yeah.
And guess what? We were growing. And, by the end of that year, I was wrestling at 150.
Yeah.
I was wrestling JV at 150. The next year, I came in at 150. Then I'm at 158. And by gosh, we recruited a lot of good people. Mm-hmm. The class behind us. So I'm like, I may never see a starting lineup. But again, Coach Steers was such a good guy. He knew that this one weekend, my dad came to town because he had been in the city for something and came up to town. I started.
That's cool.
I got my ass kicked.
See, that's
So I wrestled a couple years.
Okay.
And at the end of the second year, one of the assistant coaches comes up to me and says, Dan, we recruited you at 142. I'm like, dude, out of season, I'm, 180, 185, 190. I can't help it.
Right.
And that was kind of the final straw. So I said, I'm going to look at options. And I ended up getting on the strength and development team.
Right.
Which meant we trained the football team. And we got tables, and we didn't have to do formation.
Talk about that, because I don't think many of us even knew that existed. So how did that work?
Nobody did.
What was that? Talk about that. I mean, I've heard about it from somebody else, but the rest of us really. So what was the strength and development team relative to the football team? How'd that work?
There's a group of folks that would take football players through their workouts. One-on-one, we would take them through, counting up 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
It was kind of a sham, but we also had additional responsibilities. Like I had women's tennis and I had men's basketball, but everybody had the football team, but we also were assigned to.
But but to be fair, you had to be someone in shape and to be able to lift weights. Like if I just showed up at the weight room and said, "Hey, I can count," I don't think I'd have made the strength and development team.
Yeah, might not. We actually had a great leader, Bob Ragucki. He actually went on and was like the strength and development guy for the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh, so
we were at least taught by a good guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was interesting. And before we leave that whole era, I'll tell you, one summer, Joe Martin and I go and do a internship at Walter Reed because we think we're smart guys and we want to be doctors. So, we're in the pre-med program and we go to Walter Reed for the summer internship, and our good friend and fellow B4 Buffalo, Wade Yost, lives and grew up there in DC. And so we stay at his house. Mm-hmm. And, because we're at his house, guess what we have to do every weekend? We play rugby. So there's during the summer, so it's sevens rugby, and I loved it. I'm like, oh my God, this is my calling. I need to play rugby. And we get back to campus, we get back to the academy, and it's like, oh shit, that's a club. Yeah, I don't do clubs. So I stayed on the strength team.
I don't do clubs.
Well, I had not been a formation or a parade guy, and I would.
That's a great T-shirt, man. I don't do clubs.
I would have made the academy look bad in the parades. So I was thinking about y'all.
Thanks for leaving it to the rest of us. Because if Gabalda was there making sure your room's tidied up, I was out on the plane making sure that the ranks were filled in. That's my claim to fame.
There you go.
Transferred over to the B4 Buffaloes. You and Joe Martin headed over there. Talk about the legendary B4 Buffaloes. Now, B4 to this day is one of the most amazing groups because you guys stay in close touch. You really are looked up to that group. Talk about the B4 Buffaloes.
You know, I'm going to have a whiff here again because, as I pointed out, I was a freaking ghost. There are people. I'm calling on a senior executive at J&J a few years ago, and he says, "Oh yeah, I got to introduce you to somebody down the hall." We go down the hall. "Hi, this is Ernie Smith." I'm like, "Hi, how you doing?" I'm like, "Don't know who the hell that is." He was in my freaking company. I'm like, "Oh shit." So all this to say, yep, before great company. You should ask Chris Bump about how close he was with Rich Hatch. I'm not going to say anything else about that. Um, we had a
It's
lot of
come
fun.
up. It's come up. It's a sensitive topic in the class, and I'm glad we're exploring it now. Chris Bump and Richard Hatch were quite good buddies, and
Exactly. But I will tell you, and this goes into another one of those what I've told myself later, what advice would I've been
yeah,
given by myself. And one of the things I would have told my post academy self is to stay in touch with classmates. It wasn't quite as easy, in the 90s.
right.
Computers? Wait, we got to go to Washington Hall? Oh, no, we can have them at our own houses, right? I remember the first green screen that I had in my first house. Anyway, it was to stay in touch with classmates, friends, and that makes me think about Charlie Moses was one of my best friends, a B4 Buffalo. Chris Greer was one of my even tighter best friends,
Yeah.
fellow wrestler, crazy dude. We roomed together too often. We roomed together in Italy. We roomed together traveling the world. And it took that kind of bad news to bring us together.
Yeah, both paths.
So,
Yeah.
so when COVID hit, I don't know what I do know what it was. When I started working for this company, I had enough flexibility and leeway to go wherever the hell I wanted,
Yep.
to go generate business. And so, if I got a client in Chicago, you know what? I bet I can cast a net and find a grad or two. And holy cow, maybe even a couple 86ers. And we're going to do freaking happy hour, lunch, or breakfast, or whatever. And that was kind of my MO. And it kept me on the road and kept me, being proactive at work, but also proactive on the classmate side as well. So
I was
I got
you're the spiritual inspiration for this podcast, actually. And I'm not just shining you on. You came to Denver one time, and I knew Bobby Bullard because we were in company mates and we'd hung out a bit. But you came to town and just said, "Hey, I'm in town," and you got Joe Helmick was there, and a bunch of us got
I
together,
did.
had a really relaxed evening, and just had some drinks, had a nice time. And I thought that was such a smart thing because I traveled a lot myself, and I never did that. And I was like, that right there is the way to go. So even though we might have in the past not kept in touch, now's the time. So well done, you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to have been an inspiration on something good.
There's one. There's one. You got one. What was
Perfect.
your course of study at the academy? You were wrestling and strength training and all kinds of stuff. What was your course of study?
Well, pay attention, mister. Me and Joe Mama were pre-med. So we
Pre-med. Oh,
were
wow.
chemistry-ish, pre-med-ish, biochem, that kind of stuff.
Man,
So
fancy guy.
MSc, not HPA.
Pre-med. What kind of courses did you have to take that were over and above as part of being pre-med at the academy?
Organic chemistry,
Oh, yeah. Good for
biochem.
you. Man.
I think that's probably it. I don't know. I don't know. I, Again, I've been dropped on my head too often, and
Right.
I take pictures of my car at the airport when I travel, so I know where the hell to find my car because been
Hey,
wandering
that
around
phone's
more
good
than
for nothing
once.
else except spam anyway, so you might have to use it to find your car.
Exactly.
so,
So
but yeah,
yeah, pre-med.
wrestling is not a sport that really keeps the brains from being rattled a bit. You know.
Well, my brains were probably a little more rattled from rugby during the army um, than any wrestling because I can't believe the coach steers still who remembers who the heck I am, let alone
Hey,
loves when I come to town. I mean, he's met my wife, he's met my daughter. Um, I've stayed at their house, and it's like, wait a minute, do you even remember that one time I wrestled a varsity match? They're awesome. We love the Steers.
that's great. Yeah, that's great. And then at what? So before you did you? So Chris Bump has told some pretty legendary stories. You guys were pretty rough at the birthday times in that company. Now, some of us grew out of
Jeez.
it. You started by jumping in your window after torturing an Air Force cadet, but you guys never quite grew out of it. You were firsties and chasing each other around on birthdays. Is that right?
Yeah, there's some pretty good stories. I'm sure Chris told you the story about Pat Kilroy coming into
Yeah,
Bob
I've been
Baco's
JB's room.
window.
Yeah, yeah.
That's an epic one. I have a picture of, I guess I wasn't a firstie then. I think I was probably a yuck or maybe a cow. No, must have been a yearling because Pete Boylan and Josh Cronin were the bad guys, if you will. They were the firsties that lived next door.
Right.
You've heard of Pete Boylan
Yeah.
because his daddy
His
was
dad was
okay.
his
Well,
dad was
his son
over
was
across the way. Sure.
yeah, exactly. Well, my 21st birthday, that must have been my 20th if I was a yearling.
Hmm.
Anyway, there's pictures of me with I had two or three layers of pants on. They were down, not to my knees, but down far enough that you can see a big two on one small, very tight, well conditioned butt cheek, and then a zero on the other. And I'm just thankful that it said 20 instead of 2.0,
Right.
which is probably the grade point. No, I
Right.
graduated
Well,
with
these
those.
days people would have made sure to made it 2.0 because that's what the kids are doing these days. But we had more dignity back then.
Oh my God. Well, like I said, I'm glad I didn't get the point, the
Right.
2.0. I think
Well,
Bumper
I don't
or
think the
Pat's probably
19th would have been any more fun, right? Anyway,
exactly. Moving on.
what artillery? Now you ended up branching artillery, but obviously we had a process while we were there where we learned about the branches. And how did you choose artillery? Did it choose you? What was the story there?
Well, I wanted to either go to Hawaii or to Fort Stewart. No, I wanted to go to Italy, Hawaii, or Fort Stewart.
Okay.
And branches, dadgummit.
So you were a location guy. You said, I'm going to pick the branch that gets me to where I want to go.
Well, kind of, but when I looked at the branches, I was like, artillery seems like you use your mind a little bit. I no, they're not going to trust me to cut somebody open and sew them back together and
Right.
have them live. So I'll try to use my gray matter, um, that which is still remaining. And so I thought it was sounded kind of cool to be calculating where the shit get is shot. So
Right.
artillery's that's how I got to artillery. And Italy and Hawaii were gone, and I just missed Fort Stewart, so I had to suffer in Monterey, California.
Well, that's not a bad consolation prize.
I know it was pretty great duty. I had the 14th tee of the Pacific Grove Golf Course in my backyard for one of the periods of time I was there, and another time we were in the neighborhood right next to the beach, which
Nice.
didn't suck.
But it was a light unit, so that you weren't cruising around with big machinery, right? What did artillery at a light unit look like?
One o deuce. We would jump with the one o deuces, and I guess they had big parachutes.
Really?
Yeah. It was kind of cool. The Seventh ID Light. We supported the Ninth Infantry Regiment Manchukuo.
Yeah.
Got a bunch of coins from there. Um, they actually went to Panama when there was a little issue going on down there.
Sure.
I say they because I was actually at home when my dad was passing away on emergency leave while my unit went to freaking Panama.
Oh boy. Yeah. How about that for timing? Yeah. Okay.
Bad time. Bad time. So yeah, I'm an artilleryman because I thought maybe that would be a smart thing to do. I, I didn't even think about aviation. In hindsight, that's where the smart guys went, right?
That
Although
was.
I,
It was quite
I,
popular at the time. And I didn't even realize when we were there that was actually one of the newer branches.
I'm sure I say that, but I'm pretty sure I probably couldn't have gotten in.
Well,
I was under three grade points, so I probably wouldn't have gotten in there.
you never know. You never know. As long as you were healthy and fit, and who knows? Who knows? It's always fun to go back and rechart your career that could have been. Um, so graduation. You after you graduated, what you went to Ranger School before you went to the unit? Was that the story?
I did
Talk about that.
because
Any classmates in your was your Ranger buddy a classmate?
no, my ranger buddy was like a 50-year-old Marine that was warming up his skills to go be a what do you call that? He was a gun for hire. Um,
Oh,
so there's a bunch of
well,
classmates that
yeah.
were
There
in
you
my
go.
class, but I have to pull that picture up. I mentioned and I joke about getting bumped on my head, but I don't think I've got Alzheimer's. I've got Alzheimer's. I forget the stupidest things. And yep, was Tater in my class? 580. I was in 587.
587.
Um, he was around there. Tom Vossman, who's an 85 grad, was our top ranger. So that
Okay.
much I remember. Maybe Cabry.
Okay.
I'm
So a
trying
few
to think of that.
classmates.
Mike Root.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I went to ranger school. I thought that would provide a little credibility as you go into a light infantry unit. It's like, oh, I'm an
Sure.
artillery guy, but I'm going to be supporting the infantry. So I thought that might help a little bit.
Yeah.
And, I think it did.
That makes it for that wall behind you. It makes a nice additional award you can put up there, right? By the
It
way,
gave me,
you win so far. I mean, and it's an ongoing competition because we have 900 living over 900 living grads, and this is an ongoing process. But so far, when it comes to walls displaying excellent kit, you are the winner. You've got you actually got the whole thing, including you right behind you, which I love. So
that's, I don't know if you can see that.
yeah.
Oh, look at that one. I just got that for my birthday.
Well, happy birthday, Dan.
Okay.
Okay, now Dan's going to
This,
show us his coin collection, which is quite frankly outstanding.
this is Mark Esper's classmate.
Yeah,
This is Dan Hokinson,
yeah,
classmate. This is Joe Mama,
yeah.
Joe Martin. This is Mark Green, Congressman Mark Green.
How about that? See?
This is JT. This is one of JT's.
Well,
This is his 3-star one. Yep.
there you go.
Eric Wesley,
There you go.
Great American.
Right?
And then there's multiple Joe Mama, Joe Mama, Joe Mama. This is Dan Hodney. This is the guy. Kim and I
And
were
these are
at
their
West.
these are their promotions. Is that correct?
Well, those were promotions. This is one that's not a classmate. This will be quick. Kim and I were at West Point for an Army Navy wrestling dual meet, and we're at Patton's Lounge at the Thayer,
Yeah.
and there's a dude at the bar
Right.
with hearing aids. So I get to talking to him, and he's like this combat hero stud, and we get to talking to him. He's like the head of all infantry things down in
Right.
Benning, and this was his coin that he gave both Kim and I.
Right?
It was kind of cool. Anyway, so
And he
there's
goes
the rest.
behind just so he goes behind classmates, not disrespectfully, but frankly, we got
I
so many
got
classmates with
classmates.
coins of high order. Boom, there you go.
Yeah.
That display behind you is a testament to a successful career in sales, because without all the sales that you've done successfully, you wouldn't have that wall to put all your West Point stuff up on. So,
Who else has got a wood wall that
right,
they
I
can put
mean,
their
that's
"I
it,
love me"
right?
stuff?
If you'd have,
It matches the floor.
right, there you go. And there you go. Fantastic stuff. What so we talked a little bit about your first assignment out of at Planet Ord as we knew it in the day. But any classmates out there you run into?
Greg Fenton and Neil Costello. We actually roomed together for a while.
Okay. Neil's in my
Housed
company.
together.
I
We
know
had
him well. Yep. Just had breakfast with him like a month and a half ago.
Steve Hitz was out there. Joe Gleason. Um, and then I start going into the '87 guys. But so yeah,
Yeah.
I did Fort Ord. Actually, Alex, this is interesting. What the hell's his name? The guy from J&J. Who was the CEO of J&J? Alex Gorski. He was a battery commander
Yeah.
when I showed up, and one of the things that they made me in charge of was the PT for folks that failed PT.
Yeah.
And Alex to this day probably could run a marathon. He assigned me to take care of that stuff, which meant we would go run the beach,
Right.
which it doesn't suck. And
Right.
to make it tough, we'd run the dunes. I'd run up the dunes, and they'd have to follow me.
Right.
Anyway, so
Very
yeah,
top gun
California
of you,
was
Dan. Very top gun of you. You don't now strip down to the waist, six pack
no,
gleaming,
no.
the whole thing. We could use our imagination. All right.
Well, but now you don't have to use your imagination. No, I've got a pony keg instead of a six pack. I've graduated.
I put up the transmission interrupted.
All right, so you're
For
asking
the
about
safety of
assignment.
our viewers.
Exactly. You don't want to see that. Nobody wants to see that. So I'm at Ord.
Mm-hmm.
I come back to Fort Sill. I've been contacted by West Point. The chemistry department wants me to come back and teach. I'm like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. I want to do that. So when I come to the advanced course, I forget how I did this, but I contacted somebody and said, "Hey, listen, both my father and my father-in-law are having health issues, and this was before my dad passed away.
Right.
Um, and so I asked if I could be assigned at Sill, thinking, if I'm assigned at Sill, I'll be able to politic a little bit to get a command early so I can go to grad school and go back and teach a little faster. Well, I show up along with Rick Lang and a handful of other folks, and we get pulled out of the advanced course and we're told, oh, well, you guys did really good in this area or that area. We're going to have you teach OBC. I'm like, son of a bitch. Yeah.
Wasn't the teaching I
So,
had in mind.
no, exactly. And, I told my branch rep, I remember that it was a woman, it was a major. I remember going to her, ma'am, if you do this, I might just leave the Army. She says, oh my, I think the Army will get by. So obviously I didn't leave at the time because I
Yeah.
didn't have the option. So I taught for a couple of years, and that's when I really got into the whole rugby thing.
Huh.
Do you know Dan Guzman? Am I saying it right?
Yep.
It's not Tony Guzzi, it's Dan Guzman.
Right.
I've not stayed in touch with him, but we were really good friends then, and we ran the rugby club at Fort Sill.
Huh.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We were, anyway. So yeah, I landed at Fort Sill for the advanced course. Ended up teaching for a couple years. Had a lot of fun teaching while all our friends went off for 100 hours worth of the initial war,
Yep.
and then they all came back, and I got out.
Yeah. If there's anything that this podcast has illustrated is how group of very talented people all had various forms of luck and timing. So your timing was such and your skills were such that they had you do that thing, which led to you getting out. So you got out, and I did have a look at your LinkedIn, and your first job was in sales. So what was it? What was it about sales that attracted you? Well, first of all, kids. Did you have any children at the time, or was that still early in the process?
I had first kid was born in 91, summer of 91, and I was like, as I weighed, do I stay in? Do I get out? It's like, I've got a kid. I bet I'll have more. No one will shoot at me if I'm selling. Hopefully, no one will shoot at me if
Yeah,
I'm just in sales. So,
right. It
but
wasn't
the whole
until much
sales
later,
thing,
right?
I went to those junior
Yeah,
military officer recruiting things. It
I
was,
could tell from your
you know,
first job that you like me and many others went to one of those. Yeah, yeah.
and because I was pre med, I thought I was smarter than you guys. I'm going to go sell medical stuff. It maybe will make me feel better about not being a doctor.
Right.
And so I did that for a handful of years,
Hmm.
and then was lured into technology, and probably a good time. And I had some good fun there, and ended up climbing the ladder, and then realized as I got up the ladder a little bit, it's like, man, I'm not sure I want to be up this ladder,
Right.
because I mentioned Mr. ADHD, but you know we're all born leaders, right? And if we're not, we're trained to be, and we come from the best leadership school around.
Yep.
Well, some of us are better suited to just lead ourselves, and
Yep.
that's it took it's kind of humbling, but I still to this day remember my ex-wife telling me, "Oh, well, you don't want to be a sales rep when you're 40, do you?" Well, maybe I do.
Maybe I
So I guess
do.
anyway, I'm
Did
starting to babble on there.
did
Edit that.
did Picasso's ex-wife say you don't want to be a painter when you're 40?
Not with those
Right?
skills.
Not with these skills. Do you realize who I am? That right. Anyway.
So I get to. I'm in technology sales. I'm on a
Yeah.
plane. Southwest Airlines. I meet a guy sitting right next to me. He's the COO of a company. I like the idea of what they do and how he explained it and how he presented himself. A month later, I'm working for him, and that was 15 years ago at the company I'm working for right now.
Now,
So,
just we have to take a moment and recognize that that's high art that you can meet someone on a plane, like what they have to say, and it's not like you just then stumbled in. Obviously, you spoke back and you worked your way in, and that's a credit to you. So the Picasso analogy, not so far off the mark. If you can talk your way into a senior sales job in Southwest Airlines of all places. Now, if it was Virgin First Class, I'd say, yeah, that's what you do in Virgin First Class. Southwest Airlines, though, that's a big swing, brother. That's very nicely done.
thank you. It's been a great run, and uh,
Now,
I'm
did I
glad
hear
to.
you say, or did we? Because we in some of our messages, you get a new job at that company, or a new job, or what's going on there, or are we too early to release the information?
No, there's not a new job. It's just things are changing. We're in
And the context is your travel schedule is going to allow you to meet with more classmates, which is always an upgrade, right?
right. Um, Up until this point, the sales guy, business development guy, gal role has been you go get new accounts, you manage those accounts, you grow those accounts, and those accounts become your ATMs, right?
Right.
And so after 15 years, kind of got the flywheel in motion, and I'm figuring out how to do that and still hit the numbers that management leadership expects. One of the challenges is that a couple of my mentors that are still with the company, actually one guy is retiring full off at the
Right.
end of the year. Another guy probably is going to work another 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
The benefit of being a pursuit guy and managing is that they could say, hey, I'm going to semi-retire. And so the company will say, okay, well, we'll cut your salary and we'll limit the number of accounts that you manage, but they're still getting paid. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like
And
having
you're
a,
just to clarify, you're on the pursuit side. So you go out and generate new business, which is the most terrifying part of business for many people. So you're that.
well, that's what I will be doing. That's what I've been doing, but I've also been responsible for everything else
Yeah,
too.
managing the ongoing
And
revenues, right?
now it's going to be split in two.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, hey, babe, Kim, I'm going to be on the road a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. You got to get
Uh,
out there and
and
make it happen.
happy hour and all across the country.
Can't just send out the robots, Dan. You got to get out there yourself and make it happen.
So that this will probably resonate. And you mentioned that the Colorado trip, but I tell you, one of the things that I was thinking about as I was preparing for this is that, yeah, I was a ghost. There was a lot of guys in our company that I didn't talk to a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And not just because I was a ghost, but because they followed rules. And I thought less of them because of that. And you know what? As I've gotten a little older and the sharp edges have gotten knocked off, I go out, I'm in St. Louis. And in addition to my nephew and a couple other people in family that I see, I cast the net.
Yeah.
I run into Mike O'Leary, great guy, great cadet. It was in B4, but again, I was a ghost, and I was
Yeah.
kind of a weenie, probably kind of a weenie. But we sat down and had a couple beers, and I'm like, man, I'm glad he will still talk to me because I had gotten to be such a weenie. But the fact is, as we get older and a little more mature,
Oh,
I'm glad I had a second.
absolutely. And what I love about reconnecting with classmates is that you start from a place of just being friendly and then you become friends really fast. So you can expand your friend network. And even though you didn't even really know people as cadets, there you go.
Yeah,
But we
you're
got to
right.
talk about the kids because the only mistake I've ever made on this podcast is missing the kids. And boy, I got an earful, rightfully so. So you got 3 children, right?
I got an extra one or two. No, I've got 4 by blood and a bonus child, and
4.
I'll run through. I'll
Okay.
run through
So,
the whole
you got
deal.
a son and 3 daughters
I've got a son and 3 daughters, and then a bonus daughter. So
and a
I've
bonus
got
daughter. Okay, great.
my stepdaughter. Excuse me, my oldest daughter, born in '91, so she's what 33. She's married, lives in Chicago, Rogers Park. They've got their own place. They've got a couple dogs. She's in theater. He's in theater. She also runs and manages an Orange Theory, and is a coach. So she's fit and fun and still practicing her art. He is also in theater, but also does web design stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. They're very responsible. I'm very proud of her, and I don't hate my son-in-law, so that's good.
That's a
Um,
start.
that's the start. Go down one level, and I've got a son that was born in '93, so he's 30 all day long, and he is the guy that was the 2-time U.S. Open wrestling champion from Oklahoma State. He's the guy that, like it or not, wrestled from the time he was 6 on, and I mean, he was 0 for the first couple of years, so it was pretty great to see him develop into a great wrestler.
Yeah.
But then it's also interesting that this has provided him a living because he's on the staff at the University of Little Rock, Arkansas,
There you go.
University of Arkansas, Little Rock.
Okay.
Um, and so he's coaching there. He's got a girlfriend he's pretty serious with. They bought a house together. They're refurbing it.
Okay.
He's doing neat stuff. Drop one more level. We've got Hope.
Yeah.
She lives in New York City. Um, she's not probably been there in months and months and months because she's also in music theater. She spent a year on a Princess cruise line as a featured singer for a year, and then came back and then has been on a Broadway tour of Shrek the Musical throughout the country. That's about to end, but she's working on what's next.
Okay.
She's single and looks great and is very sharp and awesomely talented. One level further down, we've got my my blood youngest, Cassie, was born in 2001, September 2001. She lives in Bluffton, South Carolina,
Okay.
and is a chef. She also did music theater stuff. She was in some movies. Kim and I were watching a movie the other day. The hell is the name of that movie? It's the weirdest thing. It's a worst movie. Don't watch it. But she was very cute in it. But she's put that aside and is now chefing, and is a chef at
Cool.
a.
What's the theme of theater in the family? That's interesting. You've had so many interested in that realm.
The oldest daughter went to choir and sang well and got the attention of the instructor, started giving her private lessons. They started going to sing at old folks homes, those kind of things. And guess what? This was like in 7th grade.
Right.
She's the oldest. So the little sisters all want to do the same thing. Well, the next evolution, at least, it was to get into theater. And both Haley and Hope were great at it. And Cassie was great at it too. And she was really a great actress. But maybe she saw around the corner and said, unless I'm on Broadway or,
yeah,
it might be hard to make a living. So thank goodness she decided to run with her passion, because she,
good for her.
Loved to cook and stuff.
And then how many grandkids in that? Any grandkids yet? One.
I can't let you diss. I've got a bonus child.
Oh, sorry.
She's a junior at Alabama. Mm-hmm. She's the smart one. She's the conservative one. All the other girls are liberal, although, God bless her. My one daughter contacted me and said, "Hey, me and my boyfriend are both going to vote for the guy you're going to vote for, but don't tell my sisters." I said, "All right, that's cool." My youngest, my bonus daughter, she is she's over a 4.0, full ride, everything.
That's
she's
great.
Doing interior design, commercial interior design, smarter than both of us combined. Well, at least me combined.
Well,
I don't know how smart you are. You're probably smart.
What do they say about setting achievable goals, Dan?
So those are the kids. I'm sorry, you were gonna take me to.
No, I was just great. One a grandchild, no grandchildren yet.
We have granddaughters. We have granddogs. We have granddogs.
Oh, sorry, granddogs. Sorry. Okay. Okay, that's right. But obviously with a crew like that, with all of their success, grandchildren are on the way, which will give you a whole nother set of people to visit on the road. So how do you keep fit? So you had some very good advice for me, and I actually followed it around heart health, things like that. What do you do now to keep fit and healthy and keep you in the game?
I'm in the gym 4 or 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. I'm doing resistance training and cardio.
Good.
I mean, I've got a bad back. Mm-hmm. 40% disability because of it, and I'm trying to avoid surgery. And even the physical therapists and the pain management doctors are like, "Hey, whatever you're doing, keep doing what you're doing." So I'm going to keep doing strength training. I'm going light. I'm not squatting heavy. I'm not doing deadlifts, and I'm doing TRX things.
Age appropriate strength to keep us on our feet.
Yeah, that's right.
It's good advice. Okay, good advice.
And today I was gonna, whenever I can, I do yoga too, which seems sissified, but with the bad back, it helps a lot.
It's a brilliant thing to do. Yeah, absolutely.
If I was smarter, I would do it more often.
Well, you do have that young bonus daughter who maybe can instruct you, because she is smarter than all of you combined.
She's doing the hot work stuff and is making sure to tell me that there's a hot works here. She does that. All
right, so you've given us 2 examples of times in your life where you would have given yourself advice. So you've already gotten those out of the way, but now we've got to go with it. Knowing what you know now, And being in touch with classmates is already off the table because you already gave yourself that advice. Going back in time, any time in your life, all the way back to kid, whatever, where would you go and what advice would you give yourself that you think would make a difference, assuming you'd listen to yourself?
All right, I'm going to touch on a few things real quick.
Sure.
Nothing that's going to be too timely. One, listen to your dad. I would have listened to my dad more. One of the quotes that he always said and actually wrote to me many times was that the quality of a man's life is directly proportional to his commitment to the pursuit of excellence. Pretty soon, that's probably going to be right about there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. I would have worked harder when I was younger. I could have been better about it at a number of things. I've already told you. Well, actually, at USME, I'd have been involved in more things and said, don't just get off post and go drinking and chasing girls. Go do these clubs. Go to the city. Do the finance forum. Go to Europe or whatever.
And chase girls, right? So just
so speaking of girls, I would have picked him not when I was 58. I would have made sure that she knew that she was mine when I had the chance when I was 22.
Yeah.
I mean,
good one. Yeah.
We have kids. We don't have kids. All that aside, I mean, so I'm thankful for all the kids that I had before we ended up getting together. But if I would have picked her before I went to California, I'd have been happy longer.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Then of course, when I was a junior military officer, I would have invested in real estate. And as towards the end of that, I would have, invested in Microsoft and Apple and NVIDIA and those kind of things.
Brilliant.
So
you're actually the first. See, this is the Dan Schafer difference. You're the first one who would give yourself stock tips.
Damn it! I wouldn't be working anymore. Right.
But Dan Schafer, thanks so much for being on the podcast. It was so much fun to catch up.
Great. Glad to be here. Thanks for doing this. We appreciate you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Courage Never Quits podcast, where any member of the class of 1986 who is willing to tell their story will be a guest. To get the word out and stay up to date on the latest episodes, hit the like and subscribe button. With over 900 living graduates, we have a lot of stories to tell, and you don't want to miss any of them. We'll see you in the next episode.